BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. First thing to say is we've been having a little bit of a discussion about the Zodiac Killer on this channel. We've been going through one of the books about that, and we're going to be continuing onward with that one. But we also have some other subjects that we're going to be weaving in from time to time. And about maybe a week and a half ago, we did one on the Manosphere. And I think it's a good opportunity to continue that type of discussion. And during the first part, we talked about the red pill and incels and pickup artists and such. And we're going to be discussing some things associated with the black pill movement right now, but it is all very heavily tied together. I remarked in part one that I thought it was very interesting that this one channel that I was listening to called ContraPoints, mentioned that pickup artists and incels would be kind of in the same bubble as the way that they depicted them. Incels, of course, being involuntarily celibate, and pickup artists, people who are very good at picking up women, but at the same time, they also do not necessarily have love. They can find lots of short-term relationships, but they cannot find a long-lasting relationship that is based on love. And I was like, wow, I've never really heard it, broken down like that. Now, you're going to have to listen to me for a second. Listen up. You're going to have to use your imagination and think that I'm not a pickup artist. Can you believe that? I am not a pickup artist. I'm not the type of guy walking into a bar. All right, let's meet a girl for a one-night stand. Yeah, no, that's not me at all. Absolutely not. But I did have a roommate that was a pickup artist. He was from England. And every night, he has a different girl over. That's the way I used to describe him. It's not that he got lucky every night. It's not that he was successful every night, but it would be like every night a girl would come over to the apartment. It's noisy. But the thing is, though, I really began to notice, I was recalling a few things after I heard that, they're putting incels and pickup artists in the same type of red pill bubble, that he must be under an enormous amount of pressure to keep up that lifestyle, because the only thing that justifies it is that he is successful at it. Because, sometimes, like, say, for example, he goes 6 or 7 times in a row bringing somebody over, and then they're just like, get away from me, you creep. I was like, oh, wow. Then, it's just, well, he's just some kind of very aggressive, creepy guy that is doing things that women don't like. And I was like, just as an observer, that was my feeling coming away from it. So I began to comprehend a little bit more about how these things can be connected. These things can be tied together. And the heart and soul about why they put pickup artists and incels in this red pill bubble about being aware of what's going on with men's rights activism is because it's kind of what we laid out. They might be able to obtain short-term relationships, but they cannot hold down long-lasting relationships, and in their own right, they feel like they are rejected from women, the same way that incels feel like they are rejected from women. The next one we're going to be talking about today is the black pill. The black pill, and I'm going to read something here from Quora. You know that thing, Quora? I don't know if it's pronounced Quora or Quora. It's probably pronounced Quora. I've never heard anybody talk about it, but yeah, this is what it is. Black pill is the most extreme reactionary ideology of the most extreme corners of the incel community. Boo, are you scared yet? It's a reference to the movie The Matrix, in which the character Neo is given the choice, a blue pill or the red pill. Yeah, we know that one, but that's not really the truth about the black pill. Just gonna jump down. The black pill crowd thinks that red pillers don't go far enough. Black pill ideology claims, among other things, not only do women control the world, but it will always be this way and men will always be forever subordinate to women. What on earth are they talking about? I have not heard that in another piece of this black pill literature. Where the hell did that come from? And next point, the only thing that matters, or has ever mattered, or will ever matter to women is looks and status. Okay, now this is the part that we have been familiar with, that they have talked about this. And I have never heard any of this thing about women control the world. I mean, are you on the pipe or something? Goodness gracious. No, but you see very clearly that, I mean, they do say, though, even in the introduction to this Quora thing, maybe pronounced Quora, it's an extreme ideology. That sounds pretty extreme right there, but when I was watching videos about the black pill on YouTube, you can't sleep at night, so you just watch something, just talk about something. I just want to fall asleep when I'm listening to audio, and so I'm listening to some black pill videos. They just say pretty much like that. It's only centered on looks. If you do not have a certain sense of attractiveness, you will not be able to, well, attract partners. Or saying that women only care about looks. And some people are just born with good genetics, and other people are not born with good genetics. Some men, otherwise known as omega men, are biologically predisposed to never find love or sex, and trying to change this is futile and pointless, as trying to flap your arms and fly. Next point. Personality does not matter to women when they make choices about who they have sex with. And the last point, because all these things come from biological determinism, they are fixed and immutable as the law of gravity. An incel can not stop being an incel any more than a rock can spontaneously change into a cat. I mean, this stuff is very pessimistic, and it's almost like if you weren't born a certain way, then you're going to be living the same way that you are forever. There was this documentary out a few years ago called My New Face. Maybe it's still out on YouTube. And it was about two men who are dealing with the condition neurofibromatosis, where they have, kind of massive growths and tumors. I don't know the exact word but they have, massive tumors on their faces with neurofibromatosis. One guy has the complete side of his face forming into a massive tumor. And he was married. He had kids. And his wife said when she met him for the first time, she didn't see any of that. She just saw some strong, confident guy. And, this is not some guy who just, maybe, I don't really feel too confident about the way that I look. I mean, he has a massive facial tumor, a massive neurobifocal growth on his face. He got married because of his ability to use his personality. And his mother, in that one, I believe the man's name was Maurice, his mother really taught him how to overcome the differences in his appearance versus somebody else. Just to try and make him feel more normal, or even just more confident than normal. More confident than normal. Why not? There's a channel out there called Bulldog Mindset that we were talking about in the first upload that's hosted by a guy named John Sonmez. And he's more of what you would call a Chad. They have names now like Chad is just supposedly a guy who's very attractive, a guy who is perhaps has lots of money and just very muscular body. But he's telling men, hey man, looks don't matter. You can get any woman you want if you have the right kind of confidence and you know how to play your game. And everyone's watching his channel and they're like, dude, you're like some kind of bodybuilder. You're like some guy who has lots of money making videos in your expensive house. You are a Chad. By the way, did you know anybody named Chad growing up? I never knew a single Chad. Like, elementary school, all the way to high school, college, I don't know a single Chad personally. I can't say much about that. But that brings us to our next level, where when they view women, the very attractive woman is referred to as Stacy. And kind of a slightly less attractive, but also a woman in a different category would be Becky. The Stacys are the very attractive women, and the only Stacy that I knew was someone, that pickup artist guy tried to date her for a while, and she was kind of below average in appearance, and then, he was just sort of, yeah, man, I'm gonna tell you about that girl Stacy. I think she's a little bit retarded, or something like that. And she would do this thing where she would see people she would recognize in public. She would put her fingers in front of her face and go like, bah! And it was just very, very weird. So that's what I think about every time I hear the name Stacy. But I guess other people know very attractive Stacys. I do not. And that's the only one that I know. It's very odd that they would just choose these names, Chad, Stacy, and Becky, and this is just... That's what you have to use as your kind of reference point for attractive men, attractive women, and even women who are fairly attractive, but not, like super attractive. I don't know. It starts to sound weird anytime you talk about it in that way. But, there is some truth that's going on with these incel communities. Does this black pill stuff have any truth? No, it doesn't, because, biological determinism, it really isn't that big of a deal. That's almost people making excuses for themselves because they don't want to kind of face the music. Well, you could get your life together or something, or you could make choices in your life that are going to be leading to a more prosperous outcome. Nah, I'm just going to sit on the internet and get mad. That's what I sort of feel with this whole thing. And I don't mean to be overly critical of them, but it's like, that's just the feeling that I get. People who just want to sit on the internet and get mad instead of going out to face the world. The black pill stuff, though, I wonder how long this is going to last. I think that this might be somewhat of a fad. When I say that, though, there's a certain sense of reality in the incel world, is that a lot of guys are involuntarily celibate. A lot of guys are not really able to comprehend the mechanics of life. And I mentioned in part 1, I was an incel before there was an incel community, but in reality, that's kind of something I used to say. The word incel comes to us from something that was made in 1993, the Involuntary Celibacy Project, but was actually started by a Canadian woman all the way back in 1993. Yeah, I wasn't doing any dating or anything like that back then, so, 1993, I think I was 5. But anyway, the point is, though, there really is a large connection between sexual frustration and mental awareness, sexual frustration, and mental health, if you're going to look at people like Elliot Rodger. We did a couple of uploads about Elliot Rodger on this channel in the Isla Vista shooting of 2014, and what I just have to say about that is, very simply, I think there's a point about Elliot Rodger, and I don't think I articulated it very well in the uploads on that one. He writes in his manifesto, My Twisted World, that he is someone who feels very rejected by women, but he says very clearly that he feels that culture kind of conditioned women to favor more brutish and rough characteristics of men as opposed to a magnificent gentleman such as himself. And so many people look at Elliot Rodger's writing and they say, oh, he sees women having sex with other men or doing affectionate things with other men, therefore he felt entitled to receive it. It's kind of written that way. It's written that way in somewhat of a fashion, but I think that is a point that is grossly overemphasized about Elliot Rodger. Because, he says that, he sees women doing things with other men, and yes, he wants them to do it with him, but I believe he also expressed the idea that it's not simply just because they are women and that he is entitled to it only because they are doing it with other men. I think that point kind of came off in a rather poor way by Rodger. I think the heart and soul of that one was more about society conditioned women to favor tough, animal-like characteristics in men, as opposed to the supreme gentleman known as Elliot Rodger. That was just my takeaway from it, and in all seriousness, it could not be that far off, because My Twisted World is a very rambling manifesto. I stayed up all night reading it once, except for about maybe, a handful of pages. I was like, holy crap, he's just going on and on and on, and there's just lots of rambling. There's some articulate sentences in there, but the one thing, though, about Elliot Rodger, though, he was articulate, he was intelligent, he was somewhat well-spoken, but then he went on to commit a major crime like the Isla Vista shooting, his day of retribution. And recently, when we were talking about the discussions on true crime in the brain, like murderers and the brain science, just after watching an episode of the History Channel, I kind of made just some kind of follow-up notes on it. They were saying that someone who is more likely to commit those types of murders has an emotional center of the brain that is somewhat decreased, and the emotional part of the brain, the amygdala, is not very well wired to the frontal lobes of the brain that are going to be dealing with anticipation and decision-making and foresight and calculation. So the emotions and the calculating parts aren't very well wired together. That's why someone can be very articulate and someone can be very methodical in planning and calculative. and making good decisions, but at the same time, they don't really have any of that emotional connection to it. They don't have the ability to comprehend empathy and suffering for other people. Elliot Rodger, though, was definitely not a psychopath based on how emotional he was. But it definitely seems like there's probably not some very good wiring going on in his brain, and that might have happened in the womb. With Elliot Rodger, it might have happened, like, prior to birth, even. And perhaps you could say some of the same things about Alec Manassian. I noticed that the incel community is really trying to distance themselves from Elliot Rodger, but Alec Manassian, the individual who created the Toronto van attack, said very clearly that Elliot Rodger was one of his influences. I think that there is a presence by Elliot Rodger in the incel community and the black pill ideology, but at the same time, they're trying to distance themselves from that stuff. You know, sexual frustration is a very big thing, but a lot of people in the mental health world do not seem to want to talk about it. I mean, if you just want to have conversations with somebody about the subject, and you're like, hey, I'm sexually frustrated, they're going to just give you weird looks. What? Why are you telling me? I mean, we're talking about even with counselors and people that should be trying to deal with people who have mental awareness issues. This is a topic that is very difficult to discuss, and it's very difficult to talk about for a variety of reasons, because I believe there is still a certain stigma against people who are sexually active. I know that sounds absolutely crazy, but if you actually were to just sit down and be like, okay, wanting to talk about sex to a therapist or a counselor, they would be like, I'm not going to touch that one. They're just not going to say anything about that subject. And yes, I did kind of experience some of that stuff firsthand. But what I would say about the other thing to do with sexual frustration and these guys who are in the incel community, as I mentioned, I was for a long time. We didn't use the word incel. We're talking about being a teenager and going to college and such. And nearly every other guy in my friend circle was as well, so we didn't really feel the pain too much. But when you're outside of your friend circle, yeah, you do sort of experience that type of frustration and rejection. And when you want to talk about the subject, there is just a certain sense of embarrassment because people are almost viewing you like you are a weak person if you want to talk about frustration associated with sexuality. There really is a lot of judgment and ridicule, and people are just very, very unsupportive about that very particular aspect of mental awareness. I don't know why it's so fearful for some people to talk about the connection between sexuality and mental awareness, but that is all the same. And that's one of the barriers that perhaps we can overcome. It is New Year's Eve now, so hopefully in the next year, people will be less afraid to talk about sex, and just Happy New Year, stay safe. If you have anything to say at all, please drop a comment below. If you have anything that you would like to contribute to the discussion, I would love to hear it. If you like this upload, you can hit the like button. If you haven't subscribed already, please feel free to subscribe. And until next time.